good afternoon, good evening, or what time, wherever place in the country you are in. If you're in the southeast, where we're getting bracing for a hurricane, if you're in the northwest listening, welcome to the Selection Council podcast. I am Jim Renier, one of the many hosts that will be on this edition. Well, not this edition, but multiple editions of the show. First off, the Selection Council podcast is a new, unique podcast. Group of people from various parts of the country breaking down, talking about college football from the SEC, ACC, Big Ten, MAC, SWAC, MEAC, Pac-12, Big 12. Well, what's left of the Pac-12, and we'll continue on forth, especially for week 1 to week 2 to week 3. No further ado, I'm going to introduce two guests or two co-hosts that will be on this show throughout the season, including this one, and towards when we crown the national champion in January. First off, it's my good pal, my good buddy. I got to play the music, even though I can't stand it. My buddy, Patrick, University of Florida, one of my good buddies, college football fan. Yeah. Welcome to the show, Pat.
Thank you for having me. It's truly an honor to be doing something like this, and especially be able to break down everything that goes on through this whole year. So it'll be an interesting ride, of course, since it's college football. So I'm ready to kick this off.
All right. Well, another host of this show who is not going to be with us today, and actually, we got two more that are not going to be with us today. Joshua Jackson, the voice of the Jacksonville Sharks. Very polarizing here, Jacksonville. He will be on the show starting next week. Also, we have Mike McClendon, University of Oklahoma fan, host of Air Raid Attack podcast. He will be one of the other hosts. And also, we'll have special appearances by other people who have played in college, who have scored touchdowns in college, who have blocked in college. From universities yet to be named, or the universities, University of Miami, Florida State University, Clemson, LSU, and I think the other one probably is University of Florida. Still working on that one, but that's at future dates. We got multiple people, and we have multiple pollsters that we'll get to later in the show. But let's switch to the other host that's here with us today. I got to play the music now because their fight song takes forever to get going. Host of Pro Arena Talk podcast and Facebook page. He's a Buckeye fan, as you can hear the song. Sammy Sharp, welcome to In Selection Podcast.
I appreciate Jim having me, man. I really do. Blessed to have this music too. Introducing you. So.
Well, with that, I know the intros are what you like to call intros. I got 10,000 more intros to go. There's so many fight songs. First off, let's get on this, to more news or notes about what this show is about. I was brought forth an idea from a couple of people. Me and Pat have been discussing to do a podcast about college football for now, 2 years now?
Roughly, I would say 2 years.
Probably,
yes.
roughly. We tried to get one of our other buddies to join, Nick, and he just somehow doesn't want to, go through it. But eventually, I have a feeling he's going to eventually join the show. Just FYI, people, I have a feeling he is.
Eventually. I think so too.
But the object of this episode or this show is like the Selection Council. We all have some experience in the media field. Pat's more of a diehard fan. I think his dad's is your dad a bull gator for the University of Florida, or is he a big time booster, right?
The big time booster he is.
Okay, so he's not a bull gator.
No, he's not a bull gator, no, sir.
Because that's a pretty penny to be a bull gator.
That's a huge penny right there.
That's like the Golden Chief at FSU. If you're a Golden Chief, you're spending $20,000 plus just in donations each year.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is.
And also, one thing that me and Pat wanted to do, and I was got approached from other people, and there's a lot of other people that are in part of the show that you won't get to see. My good buddy, my good pal, Sammy knows him very well, Zach Kyleman. He's my co-host of the Inside the Walls podcast. He's going to be more of a pollster. He's not big into college football, but he's more of Mac Nation. He'll watch his alma mater, Ball State. So he'll give us his votes. We have other people like Philip Higginbottom, the host of the Smoking Guns podcast. He is UTSA, University of Texas. We also have Matt Patton out of Omaha for the Prime Cuts podcast, Omaha Beef Guy. He's a big-time Iowa Hawkeye fan. He will be on the show a couple of times throughout the year. Of course, we mentioned Mike McClendon, who is a Sooner Air Raid Attack podcast. We said Joshua Jackson. There are a couple of people. So the list goes on. There's like 14 people. So when you see us do top 10 polls and you go, oh, these idiots don't know what we're talking about. Well, it's just not the people who are on the screen. There's a lot more, and the list will grow. So if you want to join the Selection Council podcast as a pollster, comment, like, put your name in and say, I want to be part of it. The more people we get, the more balanced the polls get. So we won't have a rogue guy who puts Florida State at number one, which I was not the one who did it this week. It was someone else. Like, they're not the number one team, and they should stop it. It stops those type of homers. But that's what the show is. And also, as we progress, as the season progresses, and we get more people on, and we get more actual games. So right now, we're looking at what happened last week. The polls don't change when you have USC and Notre Dame take care of business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, honestly, did USC actually take care of business? Because San Jose State was keeping up with them in points. Like, I looked at the point spread. I'm like, they're favored by almost 39 points here, and it's a two-scored game in the third quarter. I'm like, again, they win the game, and you're not going to punish them off of week one. It's because it's technically still week 0, week 1. They don't do the next rankings until after on Tuesday, right? Yeah, because we have a game Labor Day tonight, right? Don't we?
Correct. I believe so, yes.
Is that Clemson and Duke, I think? Or is that Clemson, Georgia Tech? No, Clemson, Georgia Tech was last season, so Clemson, Duke is this season.
Yeah.
Wow. Great job, ACC. Great marquee matchup to close out Labor Day weekend. Yeesh. But overall, let's just do this before we do the top 10 about how the episode is structured. This is more just an introduction and a couple of us, and we're going to get more of the hosts for next week in a few weeks, and we'll get all the other players in. We might have 1 week on this screen, ladies and gentlemen, 10 people on this stream. Even though we're not live right now, we will be live. I think we're going to try to work out somewhere we go live when the college football playoff starts to release their polls, and we'll drop our shows because, like, okay, this is what the fans think, and this is what the computers think, or the people that act like they're the committee. Mm-hmm. But first off, let's start off this past off season. Pretty hectic. We have a conference that's literally going to get a death blow here within the next 48 hours in the Pac-12. I have connections at Florida State. I used to work for Florida State athletics. I have good connections with people at FSU, and I've heard stuff about, the Big Ten's the Big Ten's a done deal. Problem is FSU doesn't have the money to get out their granted rights to the ACC. And then you look at Oregon and Washington and USC, and you look at Arizona State going to Pac-12. There's claiming that they're going to be a Power 2, which a lot of people expect. I still think, my honest opinion, I think we'll never get there. I think we'll stay at a Power 4 because some odd freaking thing that bugs me right now. This is just me as a fan. I have some strange feeling that Notre Dame is going to cave and go, no, we're going to go to the ACC because they get Stanford and all. And all of a sudden, the ACC is set. It's like, why would FSU and Clemson leave when you're bringing in the NBC? I still think that can happen. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't, because Notre Dame's going to stay independent. They don't give a crap. But when they only drew 3 million people against Navy, NBC's not going to give them $78 million. I hate to say it. For a TV contract. So, Pat, let's go with your discussion with you first. What's your opinion about this, the chaotic nature that is the alignment of college football this offseason?
Oh man, there's so many stuff going on in the college football world right now. Like you said about the Pac-12 going down to the Pac-4 right now, which is unbelievable. Nobody would ever thought about that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you got to think of some of these teams that are wanting to get out and actually start drawing more attention to themselves. why not? Why not start drawing more attention? Like look at UCLA, look at Oregon going to the Big Ten, leaving the Pac-12 because they need to do something because it's hard enough for the Pac-12 to get into the college football playoffs because they had to run the board, they had to run the schedule, have to win the conference championship game because a lot of times they get overlooked, sometimes, but not all the time though.
Only selected schools. The USC and Oregon, if they run the table, they get in with no problem because they're brand names.
Correct.
Washington
Yes.
maybe needs some help.
Washington
Utah,
would definitely.
Yes, but it's like in the ACC. If FSU, Clemson goes undefeated, they're not keeping those teams out because of
No, of
the
course
name
not.
recognition. Now,
Yeah,
if it
name
was like
recognition.
NC State, it was like, I don't know. But
Yeah.
That's my opinion about that.
No, I completely agree with you on that because I mean, and plus you can, I mean, coming from the Pac-12, I mean, going down to here at University of Central Florida, I mean, they're going to the Big 12 first year in the Big 12. We'll see what they can do. They've been talking, saying they could do something in a conference, especially in the Big 12 conference. We have Oklahoma, Texas, and Oklahoma State. But at the same time, they won't be facing those two teams, Oklahoma and Texas, next year because those two teams are falling into the SEC, which is a big move for SEC to bring those two teams in. It's not only because of money. I mean, you start getting those rivals too. Oklahoma, Texas, the Red River rivalry. You have that coming on in, and you finally get the Texas A&M game back too. So that's going to be interesting because Texas A&M did not want any part of Texas to join the SEC at all.
They didn't know it was happening. They were left out.
Correct. Yeah.
So
yeah. They were left in the dark.
Paul Feinbaum was saying, "Yep, they had no clue until SEC passed and brought them in." They're like, and Texas A&M was like, "Hey, we got nukes." What the f?
Yeah. So you got to feel sorry for some Aggie fans going to see those Longhorns back in town again.
But I just want to say this. I know could be some Big 12 fans that join the show, and of course we have Mike that will join the show. He's a Sooner fan, so he's only a temporary Big 12 fan until next year. Then he's the SEC. To the UCFs, to the Houstons, and to the Cincinnati's and the BYU's, congratulations of getting to a power conference. Technically, yay. But the two bell cows of that conference are no longer in your conference next year. So the ACC will still be considered a power conference until Clemson and FSU leave. If Clemson and FSU leave, the ACC is the Big 12. Same as the Big 12 right now. They're the Big 12 because of Oklahoma, Texas. Who holds that weight? With all the new additions of this, I'm going to get Sammy in here. Yeah. Big 12, all these new additions. Arizona State, BYU, Utah, Cincinnati, Houston. Who am I missing? There's another couple of schools. They're going to add like 6 schools to the departure of 2 schools. But do those 6 schools equal those 2 school brands?
Yeah, and then they don't. That's the unfortunate thing, TV-wise, and that's what a lot of people are looking at, TV revenue with these conferences and these ADs are looking at. As far as resume goes, and that's why I'm going to be really interested with the realignment. Are they going to eventually put in a 2 or 3 loss Big 10 or SEC school after all this realignment over a 1 or 2 loss Big 12 school because of resume? We also don't know what out-of-conference schedule is going to look like. I feel like if you're USC or these Big 10 or SEC schools, you're going to be less inclined to go out and schedule out of conference. I know Oregon said that they'll still play Oregon State, but I don't know. Is that going to be the only, as far as it goes, out of conference? Are we still going to get USC, Notre Dame, these other traditional rivalries? Pitt, Cincinnati is scheduled, I think, for like the next 6 years, home and away alternate. Or is that going to still be a thing? So we'll see as far as that goes. With the Big 12, it has to be they're really relying on Oklahoma State, Baylor, Colorado, BYU, those schools to really break out, and Houston to become their own, because Houston's had their years where they've been 12-0, 11-1 recently. So I feel like they're really bidding on these schools to take the next step and become more consistent. But TV wise, I don't think they'll ever hit what Texas and they never will hit what Texas and Oklahoma is as one of those top 5, top 10 schools.
The one thing you can consider the Big 12 and a lot of the SEC and Big 10 people will, laugh at them about is you don't have, after Oklahoma, Texas, you don't have no brand names.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also say the Big 12 is very freaking consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Every single year, there's another team out of nowhere that you go, I'll be damned. Where in the hell did they show up to? Like 3 years ago, it was Baylor. Last year, it was TCU. 5 years ago, it was Oklahoma State. Like, honestly, Oklahoma State was 1 yard away from making the college football playoff last year. They lost. Whoever won that game in the Big 12 championship game, that team went to the playoff. That was 2 years ago. Excuse me. The Big 12. One thing I laugh, like my buddy at work's Oklahoma State Cowboy, and he's like, I'm glad that Bedlam's over. Like I don't have to deal with them and their egos. I'm like, honestly, you shouldn't, because both those schools bring a lot of money to the state, a lot of excitement. Now that Oklahoma leaves, Oklahoma State needs to be that next brand that takes the helm and push forward. But knowing the Big 12, maybe Iowa State's that next team or Kansas State. There's no consistency in that conference. And that's the reason why Oklahoma and Texas, even though they won't say it, they're leaving because of money. They're just getting tired. They're the only 2 top dogs. They want more. Like that's when you look at the SEC. Yes, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Auburn. They have consistency where they're owning each division or owning the SEC. But the conference is 16, 17 deep. Big 12, it's Oklahoma, Texas, TCU 1 year, Texas Tech the other year. Like there's no consistent. When you look up at the Big 10, some years you have Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. And you throw in Iowa, who won some of the most boringest football you watch. They still find a way to win games. Big 10, honestly, is just waiting for Nebraska to finally wake up. Okay, so that's a major brand that's been dormant for 20-some-odd years. Rutgers and Maryland are not going to move make things go, wow, crazy. Like, you look at the Big 10. Last year, one thing I've noticed about the Big 10 is that you had Ohio State, Michigan playoff teams. You knew that's going to happen, but Penn State's there. Penn State, I think, went 9-3 last year. Penn State made the Rose Bowl last year. Wisconsin dropped off the map, where that never usually happens. Purdue's all of a sudden becoming Purdue used to be that team that you laugh like, they're the Vandy of the Big 10. They actually were playing some smash mouth football with Brom. You look at the Big 10, there is depth. And even though when people bash the ACC, it's the same way. Clemson, Florida State, NC State, very consistent clubs last year. They were in the top half. And some years, ACC is only 1 team. Last year, the ACC had 4 to 5 teams. It's just problem is when there's 4 or 5 teams in the ACC, that means the top 2 teams are duds. Last year, that was the case because Clemson lost games that they were not supposed to lose to. But consistently, the ACC, SEC, and the Big 10 are deeper conferences with consistent teams. The Big 12, it's like at a Russian roulette. Who's going to win it this year? And that's the one thing I look at. It's like, I can't wait till next year when we get to that 12-team field. Who's that next brand in the Big 12 to step up and take that position? That's the key, in my opinion. And if I look at it right now, and you told me, James, bet who wins the Big 12 next year. Just give me a dice. Give me a 14-sided dice and roll it. Hey, it lands in West Virginia. That's who I think is going to win it. Because that's the Big 12 over the last 5 years. Every year, it's a different team that wins it. Besides the occasional year when Oklahoma decides not to lose games that they're not supposed to lose. Like, when Oklahoma and Texas are playing at par, they're the 2 major brands. And when they're in the SEC, it's going to take, I think, a couple of years for them to get acclimated. But once they are, they're going to challenge for titles too. But then again, when they're in the SEC, 2 losses and they're a playoff team probably? 3 losses, they're in the playoff team because of the 12-team field. So it's unique. The Big 10's the same way. The Pac-12, unfortunately, is dissolving. The 4 remaining teams, the last rumor we've heard is Stanford and Cal going to the ACC. Whoopee. and SMU still have no clue why. Like why ACC? Like your two prominent brands want out, and your counter offers like Stanford, Cal, and SMU. Like, read the room, fellas. Read the room. But what really irritated me is that I read a report about expansion stuff from last year. Oregon and Washington were in negotiations with the ACC last year to join the ACC. And the ACC is like, you don't fit our education blueprint. Two AAU schools don't fit the ACC. So what they'll counter with Cal and Stanford. Like, ACC, you freaking trip me out sometimes. But I have a feeling with the conversations that we're going to have on this show, I think we'll still go back to the realignment because there's always going to be something later in the year that's going to break. Like, you're like, really? That's going to really happen? That's kind of BS. But overall, who's calling me? Never mind. Spam. Oh, overall, what's your expectations on how they're going to adjust the 12-team playoff? 6-6, or is it just going to be top 12? Sammy?
I would assume it'd be top 12. How it is, maybe we'd have to see more in detail. They're going to do like a conference championship automatic in, but I doubt that they do anything like that to incentivize they continue to play throughout the year and incentivize out of conference scheduling. My best bet would be top 12 and not try to do any conference tie-ins, because once you do conference tie-ins, it can get dicey with a 7-5 or 8. You might have a down year in a conference and you get an 8-4 team, right? So it would be top 12 in my opinion.
Pat?
I agree too. I agree with Sammy as well, because it's going to be top 12 no matter what. I feel like for right now, until we actually start seeing how they actually going to do it. Because if they try to do it right now, it like Sammy was saying, like, you gonna have a 7-5, 8-4 team that'd be looking and saying, hey, what about us? Like, why are you not putting us in there right now? Yeah, we deserve a shot at this. So it'd be too much of a chaos. It would be way too much chaos. So on top of that, you'd be trying to figure out, well, I can't kick these other teams out. They only lost 1 or 2 games. So it's just, I feel like this is going to be a top 12 for right now.
I think it's going to be top 11 and the highest ranked group of 5.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have to please them. Even though that group of 5, well, if none of them keep joining conferences, like now it's Tulane, Coastal Carolina are the top 2 group of 5 teams right now. Conference USA just basically brought up a bunch of guys from the South Conference, Jacksonville State and a few others. So there's no really team in the Conference USA that can fit that mold.
Half the group of 5 was in the FCS a few years ago. So that's what half the group of 5 is right now.
Yeah, James Madison, Old Dominion. Yeah. There's Liberty, maybe that team. Appalachia State. I honestly think when the 12 team happens, we'll get a Sun Belt, or like what people like to call it, the Fun Belt. I guarantee they get a team in the tournament as a 12 seed. Yeah, they'll go to the 5 seed team and get demolished, but they'll get in. But I think that's what they're going to do. I think there's going to be only automatic qualifier is the highest ranked Power 5, highest ranked G5 team, and everyone else is the top 11. And possibly, and if you look at top 11, you look at the last couple of years, 2 losses, 3 losses can get you in. So if you lose two games next year, that may not put you out. So the race for the 11 seed or a 10 seed or a 12 seed is going to be pivotal next year. In the overall scheme of things. But this year, the Final Four, it's the last season of it. So, but how we started the show, I know it's a long intro, but we have to fill 30 minutes before we get to the second 30 minutes of the show. We all did a preseason vote, all 14 of us. If you didn't see it on our Twitter account, we'll play the video here of the top 10 of what all of our voters thought the playoffs will look like preseason entering week 0/week 1. We'll get an updated one after the week's games next week. So let me put this in the stream and let me. Oh, well, it's right there. It's playing it.
Yeah.
Don't need the intro. Okay, week 0. Here we go. For your podcast listeners, number 10 team in this is the Washington Huskies. Clemson Tigers coming in at 9. Number 8 is the Penn State Nittany Lions. Number 7 is the Seminoles of Florida State. Number 6 is the USC Trojans. Number 5 is the LSU Tigers. And we reversed the order to the number 1 team is Georgia, followed by number 2, Michigan. Number 3, the Ohio State University. And number 4, Alabama is the playoff field. So the Selection Council podcast voters and us, top 4, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State. Gents, let's start with you, Pat. What's your opinions about the top 10? Anything jumping out at you, or is this pretty like preseason poll stuff?
I mean, it's gonna be just like that. I mean, of course, you got your typical Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, Ohio State. Those are the ones that are pulling the line right now in these conference, in these Big Ten and SEC. Yeah, a lot of people probably gonna come out here and say, "Oh, why is Washington up there?" I mean, Washington has been proven time to time that they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be a little bit interesting one. I feel like so I think that'd be the team to watch out in the top 10 right now. I mean, something might happen along the line in the top 10 in the future this year. But I mean, you really got to think: can that USC Trojans can they actually do it this year? Can they actually get that team into the Final Four, the last Final Four this year? If they can, then that's going to be a huge win for the Big Ten, like we're discussing in the realignment, because that'd be another team that they're adding into the Big Ten that could get into the college playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Well, technically, if you listen to all the rumors and from all the so-called insiders, if you look at the top 10, that is all SEC and Big Ten.
Mm-hmm. Correct. It
the
is.
rumor is like Florida State and Clemson going in the Big Ten. Look at that. That's all SEC and Big. Washington's already in there. So, like, that's if you look into the 10 years from now, that's what people say it's going to happen. But right now, you got the 2 ACC. But I know you mentioned about how Washington's right there. Other teams that have received votes in our poll, who missed right out. Tennessee is at 11. They were only 4 points behind Washington. Notre Dame was a 12th. So if we did the top 12 playoff, you have Notre Dame, LSU in the first round, Tennessee, USC, Washington, Florida State, Clemson, and Penn State in the first round in a 12-team playoff. So that was the votes that we got to 12. Sammy, what's your opinion about this? I know we're not selecting the teams yet.
Yeah.
Like, we'll do that later, but this is just what this is what all the preseason people think as of what the Final Four looks like without the pollsters.
I'm looking at top 10 here. I think it's interesting how high Alabama is versus a lot of other teams like LSU and USC. I know a lot of people are hyping up Alabama personally, but they struggled in a lot of games last year, and they lost Bryce Young and their best offensive player. So we'll get more details about that later, but I'm looking right now. And there's one thing I don't think a certain team got any votes that I think could be in this conversation later. Did North Carolina get votes? No. So I think at the end of this year, we'll be seeing them on this graphic, possibly in the top 4. So we'll get more details as far as what order, but it's definitely an interesting top 6, top 10. I'm excited for the season to kick off and get the final 2 and 3 game, week 13.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an interesting stat. I know a lot of people out there who've listened to me on other shows. I'm a stats freak. There's only been 2 teams in college football have made the college football playoff outside of the AP top 25. 29 of the 36 teams who've made the college football playoff were ranked in the preseason AP top 10.
I believe
And
it.
I looked at the preseason AP top 10 compared to us. We have 9 of the 10. The only team that's not in there is Washington. You replaced them with Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, these 4 teams currently right now, even though how it's shaped up, honestly, if the college football committee looked at this, I guarantee this is what the freaking games will look like. They'll have the 2 conferences battle it out and have, one SEC, one a Big Ten in the final. They're going to do that. They're not going to put Ohio State. But then again, they'll be like, oh, we don't want a rematch again. So I highly doubt this is going to be the Final Four. I think they're, in my opinion, even though preseason hype and excitement's there for a lot of these teams, a lot of these teams are there because of past recency bias. And you also have teams in here that, here we go again. They're back in the top 10. Like they haven't done anything in decades. Type of scenario like USC.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're back up in the top 10. Can they finally do it this year? We won't know until they actually get to the playoff and actually do something. But overall, the top 10 for us, not a shocker. We had a guy, I forgot who put it in. Someone had Notre Dame at number 7 in this poll and
Really?
had Florida State out of his top 10. And I was like, that's interesting. We had a guy that put Florida State at number 1 and had number 2 at Georgia. Okay. Apparently he doesn't look at last year. For me, my personal belief, if you win a national title, you're number 1 until someone beats you in the regular season. Okay, like I don't like the narrative about strength of schedule, this strength or whatever, because if Georgia gets to treatment this year, and I've talked to many Georgia Bulldog fans this year. I work with a couple of good friends that are Georgia Bulldog fans. They've even told me their schedule is soft this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, is it softer than the 2014 FSU schedule? And then looked at FSU schedule for 2014. They go, oh, yeah, it's a lot softer than yours. And I said, okay, so when you guys struggle on the road at Missouri and still win the game in the fourth quarter, I expect Georgia to go from number 1 to number 4 in the college football playoff rankings. I expect that. Well, they won the national title last year. No, don't change the narrative. If you're going to do that to FSU in 2014, who brought everyone back, the quarterback, the receivers, everyone back, and then you don't do that to an SEC team, that's when I go, the committee has issues, and that's when I go, just stay with the BCS rankings. BCS rankings got it right no matter what happened. The computer still got it right. But I have a feeling like Georgia, yes, you look at their schedule, I go, okay, when. Finally, they play something in week 7, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Then they got to win Vandy, and then they get Florida. Like, bias in committees, we've seen it with the SEC. I don't see it a lot with the Big Ten. I see it a lot with the Pac-12, especially with Oregon and USC in the past. Like, you got these people say, that Pac-12 is a weak conference, but yet teams didn't get punished. But when ACC teams, Florida State and Clemson, were the number 1 ranked teams in the nation after winning the national title, they struggled their one game against somebody and they fall 3 spots.
Yeah.
Ohio State won the national title in 2014. In 2015, I think they went wire to wire with, I think, Virginia Tech at Vol Tech as the number 1 team. They still won the game, and Vol Tech was a bad team that year. And Ohio State went from number 1 to number 3. And the 2 teams that jumped them played nobodies that week, and they just said, well, Ohio State struggled. So the question for because this is the reason why I did the show. It's because I want to talk about how we as fans see the selection committee go, really, you're going to do that to this team? What's your opinion about how the committee, even though they don't want to say it publicly, shows extreme bias for certain defending national champions, but other defending national champions, they just turn their eye because they have an off night, but punch other defending champions because A, there may be a player on that team they didn't like, or a coach, or they lost a bet from last year. What's your opinion about committee members holding their votes because of personal vendettas? And should that be allowed in selection processing, even though if it's week 12 in the college football rankings?
You mean I do want to say one thing. I'm going to spin this back to 2014 with the Florida State team. I do remember that team. I think until like week 7 or week 8, Florida State was ranked number 1 because they had the win streak and there was a lot of stuff before they dropped.
Yeah.
I also remember that year.
Didn't lose the game in the regular season.
Yeah. But I also
got demolished in Oregon, but we didn't lose the game in the regular season. They got their asses kicked by Oregon.
I remember that. That Jameis Winston meme.
Bro, yep.
Yeah. I remember that year, though, there was a lot of fourth quarter comebacks. Florida State could not keep a lead to save their life that regular season. Every lead that they had was in the fourth quarter. Every lead that they had was in the fourth quarter, and they won the game off of. I remember Oklahoma State, and they came back down from, I think, 10 points in the fourth quarter, something like that.
9.
Yeah. 9 points in the fourth quarter. That whole year, it was a struggle bus for Florida State. I think they only won against Samford, where they beat them by 30 or 40. And I think they beat Florida that year pretty impressively. Those were their only 2 really impressive wins.
No.
I'm trying to think.
Florida was a dog. We didn't blow out Florida.
That was a dog fight there.
So,
that was a dog fight. Yeah.
Florida State was
a 14.5-point favor against Florida, and I think it was one possession game in the fourth quarter.
It really was.
And they were also following up a year where 2013, they had one of the best seasons in college football history, where they blew everyone out and they put them up against it, and they beat them by 25, 28 points. So I think that was a damaging effect, and that's why they fell to 4 by the time the playoffs rolled around, and they lost to Oregon pretty bad that year. They actually, I think that was their best first half all year because they were only down 14 points at the half.
They were down by 3 until Dalvin fumbled it on the last possession. They were going on trying to score. Dalvin fumbled it. Then Marcus Mariota, 2 plays later, scored a touchdown. Then it went to a 13-point game. And that was all she wrote. That was Dalvin's rookie year. And people were like, oh, he's a bust. He turns out to be one of the greatest running backs ever play at Florida State and a good running back in the NFL. That FSU team was very stressful. In my opinion, I couldn't stand 2014. Yes, we ripped the throats out of Miami in Coral Gables. That was a great game. We beat the Gators, which was a great game. That game should have been one-sided, beat down by FSU. That was a one possession game. What was it, Harris your quarterback, Pat, or was it what's his name? He wore number 3.
Oh my goodness, you would throw that at me. I think it was
I don't think it was Frank's.
That's the type of year as a Florida fan you want to forget because we haven't had good quarterbacks for a while, you know. So it's kind of bad.
That was Muschamp years.
It was kind of a combination of Muschamp, Muschamp and
that was before Driscoll. I know that.
Yes, it was before Driscoll. Everybody, he was definitely hyped up, but we're getting off subject about that.
But still, even though you as Florida, you national champions, and the last one was 2008, you had the BCS system. So the BCS, you just had to score a certain amount of points, and the computer's like, oh, you really destroyed this team. It doesn't matter what the score was in the first half.
Yeah.
But now you got committee members that go, well, it was a one possession game with 9 minutes left in the first quarter, and it should have been up. You look at I tell you, the listeners, go look at the committee members and who they're associated with. Some of them you go, why is he a professor of economics in this selection committee? At ODU, Old Dominion, get out of here! Like we don't like. No offense, I know you're a team in the D1 football, but there's no way you're making the playoff. Like, come on, make up your mind. It's just things like what Sammy brought up. Yeah, that's 2014 was stressful. Like Ohio State's had years in the past where they may not have won national titles. They probably were a top 4 team, and they were getting punished because they went wire to wire against Illinois or wire to wire against Purdue, even though Purdue played out their hell out of their hell out of their ass that night.
I think
Like,
it was 2016 or 2017. We had a better resume than Alabama, and we got left out to Alabama. And Alabama's best win was, I think, against the unranked LSU team. That was their best win all year. So it's hard to argue apples to apples when they're not keeping consistent. That's what I would like from the community.
Yeah.
What aggravates me is like me and Pab talked about this before. I think we talked about it last playoff season, where why are we still holding teams currently today based on performances from last season?
Yeah.
Oh, the reason why they're in here is because they did this last year. That's last year. That's a completely different team from last year.
Yeah, and so that's the thing with this committee is they go base everything from the past. They don't look to the future. They don't want to see what this team can do, what it can really do. And that's why they always dust off the old paperwork from the past, bring on up. Oh, this team did this team did that. It gets tiring. It's old from always seeing that from that committee. But here we are. They're still doing the same thing. They're not changing their agenda up. They're gonna hold teams to a certain accountability. They're gonna make sure that Alabama's definitely gonna get in there no matter what. And
also you can also say this to like the AP vote or something. Like I trust the AP more than I do the coaches poll, because last year the coaches poll had a massive erection off of Florida's win over Utah last year. Like they went from unranked to 7th. I'm like,
no, we went from unranked to 12th, and
it's a massive jump.
It's a massive jump. And yes, Utah was. I think Utah was
7th.
7th. Yes, correct. Yes, Utah was 7th, and I kid you not. I was at that game and leaving that game, I was happy that we beat a ranked team like Utah, because Utah was loaded. Utah, there was talks about Utah getting in there and getting into the playoffs, but they come down to Gainesville and they lose, but it wasn't big enough to push Florida all the way to 12th. I don't agree with that. And when I saw that came out, when the rankings came out the next day, I'm like, why is Florida ranked 12th? They don't deserve to be 12th right now. Because beat one good Utah team. No, I didn't agree with them on that at all. Because look what happened after the following year. They lost to Kentucky badly.
Yeah,
embarrassing actually.
Like I've always said this, and I think Pat will agree with me, or you will too, Sammy. We don't need preseason rankings until at least week 5.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to put a number next to a Georgia or a Michigan in a preseason matchup of a kickoff classic. People know the brands. For instance, look at last year's Florida State LSU game. They weren't ranked. That building was sold out, 74,000. It was the second highest viewed game last year in kickoff weekend. Like you don't need a ranked number by those teams to bring eyes. People know the brands.
Yeah.
And I just have a feeling like do what the NFL does. They don't do rankings. They just win, clinch a playoff spot. Like in the college football, you have to do that. You have to do rankings and start showing where teams are at.
Yeah.
But I read an article on Sports Illustrated a couple days ago, which was unique. The guys did a review of the past 25 years of the rankings and looked at how many teams started in the top 25 and how many did not. Over the last 25 years, 37% of the field that started preseason ranked top 25 missed the top 25.
I believe it.
That's almost 37. That's a hell. Like, what are we doing? Come on. What are we doing?
It's crazy. I think that there's some stats that are misleading as well. that help out. This preseason top 25 almost gives a fake narrative to stats. Florida was, I think, a top 10 team with Felipe Franks that year that they came back with I don't think it's Felipe Franks. I forget the name now.
Talk about contrast.
Francois. DeAndre Francois.
No, that's
FSU.
Alabama.
Yeah, that's FSU. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
FSU.
So
yeah, it's definitely FSU.
They were like a top 10, top 5 team that year, and they got blown out. I think it was Alabama that played them week 1, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or I forget what. But either way, that's a top 5 win now, top 10 win for Alabama against the 6-6 Florida State team that was not really that good. So I really think, in my opinion, it should never go. Those AP top 25 wins should be counted at the end of the year versus like from the start to week by week by week, because now there's misleading stats involved.
Hey, don't offend the FSU that year. We went to the greatest bowl game of all time. We went to the Independence Bowl at Shreveport. Beat Southern Miss. What do you do?
Yeah, I could throw something out there too, because look at last year. I think it was close around October time when the college football committee came out with the top 4, and go running through it and all. You put Georgia at 2 or 3. I'm trying to remember it, and you put Tennessee as number 1 that year.
Yeah, and without Georgia and Tennessee playing each other yet.
Yeah, and that was so interesting. And I'm like, so why are you doing that right now? Like, you just trying to stir something? You trying to hold Georgia accountable? Then look what happened. Georgia just knocks them out.
Yeah,
just because Tennessee beat Alabama, and Alabama, come to find out, was having a down year. Like, Alabama's still being held to that regard like they're Alabama from 2 years ago. Alabama's a damn good football program, and they're going to be a team that's still going to win 11-plus games. But last year's Alabama, for half the season, for most of the season, they weren't Alabama from Derrick Henry days and Devontae Smith days. No, they won't.
No.
But because, like, we get all this talk from the committee being very biased. People say it's biased. I just go, like, their narrative changes depend on who the team is. Their narrative changes if it's Alabama, because they all love Nick Saban. The narrative changes if it's Ohio State because of Justin Fields. The narrative changes because Jameis Winston was a quarterback and he stole crab legs from a Publix. Okay, the narrative changes with a team. And let's say was the year that they put Washington at 4, and they had Washington jump. I think that year, I want to say it was Auburn. No, not Auburn. LSU. At number
LSU.
4, it was like Washington doesn't deserve to be in there. They don't belong in there. And what happens? They make the college football playoff and they get freaking the ball.
Yeah.
Like it was like, okay. The only thing you see that Washington team was three players that make the NFL. One plays in the Rams right now, I forgot his name. But that's it. It's one thing that I get irritated about college football, especially the selection committee, is that the narrative changes depending on who the number 1 team is of that year. They don't do it based on performances. Like Georgia should never drop the 3 or 2 for last year. They were the number 1 team in the nation because they're defending national champions. Because I think that's the only thing you hold regard to the previous year. Well, what's the reason why they're number 1? Because they won the freaking championship last year. Like, they're the defending champions. Come out the king, you better not miss. And so far, no one's beating them. The question now is when we get to that 12-team field. What's the narrative going to be? Well, they have 3 losses because they play in the SEC. Well, this is a 2-loss team in the ACC, but their 2 losses are 2 SEC teams. Well, they play in the ACC. Well, they went undefeated in the ACC, and they're a bunch of because they have 2 losses to other conference teams. The question is, like, the 12-team fields next year, 2 years from now. Does that narrative switch based on who the hot conference is that year, or whoever the national champions is? It's an aggravating subject to talk about because as fans, we go look at a team and go, yeah, we can tell that Georgia's legit number 1 team. Well, Tennessee's number 1. Well, they're good because they just beat Alabama. They have to still beat Georgia. I have a feeling there's a lot of recency bias on weekly rankings, but if there's a certain team in the top 4, they always want to go to the historical bias, especially if it's Alabama.
Yeah.
Well, Alabama's number 1 because they're 7-time champion. You can't win 7 championships in one season. You can only win 1.
Yep.
And it usually happens at the end of the year, not the season that you're currently in. So my rant's over on that. So let's get to some of the quick topics. We got about 10 minutes to burn here on this episode. God bless America. Technology. We already did the top 10. Let's do conference champions. Pat, Power 5 plus G5.
So the Power 5 for the conference championships this year, I say coming out of the SEC, you're gonna have Georgia, I believe. Georgia's showing right now that they're still the number 1 team. Of course, they're gonna be that number 1 team. Then it's gonna be hard to knock them off their horse right now because they're right there. They want a 3-peat. Every Georgia fan wants that 3-peat right there. You have ACC. Yeah, you're gonna have Florida State coming out of the ACC. They're gonna win it, I believe. I mean, it's gonna be a tough road because I know they merged the divisions together. They don't have the Atlantic, they don't have the Coastal right now, so they might as well be facing Clemson twice in 1 year. But I still see Florida State coming out of the ACC. Your Big Ten is going to be pretty interesting. Can Michigan do it again? I mean, like no offense to Sammy, I know Michigan beat y'all in the horseshoe last year, but can they actually do it again though? But I think overall, I feel like Ohio State will come out of the Big Ten. I feel like they'll win the conference championship because they want that revenge. They want to prove that they're still up there, up in on the high horse on the Big Ten. They still want to pull that weight, of course. Pac-12 gets a little more interesting because you have teams like Utah. Utah's always being talked about, always, and also Oregon, USC, UCLA. But I feel like USC will come out of the Pac-12 and win that conference. Big 12. Oh, Big 12. It's like James said earlier. Roll the dice. You don't know who's going to win that conference at all. I mean, it's like TCU last year. It's like where did TCU come from? No, nobody knew where TCU came from. They just came out of nowhere and started knocking teams off that they shouldn't be winning against. Yeah. But I feel like you'll probably see I'll say Oklahoma will win the Big 12 because they want to go and win the last Big 12 conference championship game before heading into the SEC. Now my G5 is that is a little bit digging around on that one. I'll say Tulane. I mean, Tulane has been proven that they deserve to be up there. I mean, days in and out. And I mean, look at them right now. They're in the top 25. So why not Tulane? Why not the big green wave, you know? So
I'll start with the Pac-12, USC. Caleb Williams, Heisman favorite. Then I'll go to the Big 12 here. I don't know about Oklahoma. Brett Venables is still yet to prove himself, but I'll go with Texas, their rival. I like what I see with Quinn Ewers last year, and now they have a backup in Archman, and I'll be interested to see if he gets any playing time. Mm-hmm. I doubt it, but it'd be fun to see it. Then we want to go Big Ten, SEC. I'll stick with Georgia. just the national champion. I think it's going to be a lot harder though. I think LSU has a really good chance to upset them this year. We saw Brian Kelly last year go from I don't know. I forget where LSU was the year before. I think they're barely bowl eligible, if they were bowl eligible, into the SEC West champs. We're going to see another year with Brian Kelly, and I think he's going to really give this team a run for their money next year, and he could possibly make the playoff, be 2 SEC teams. As far as the Big Ten, I hate to say it, but Ohio State lost a lot this year, and the Wolverines retained a lot this year. They also beat Ohio State last year with no Blake Corum. So as much as I hate to say it, I think the Wolverines are going to beat Ohio State and whoever represents the Big Ten West in the conference championship. And in the ACC, I really think you have it's 3 schools, and I referenced them earlier with North Carolina, Florida State, and Clemson. I think those 3 schools, between those 3, you're going to have a good conference championship. But I'm going to go with my gut. And in a conference like the ACC, it's a lot more like a pro style, a lot more reliant on the quarterback. So I think I'm going to go with Drake May and the North Carolina Tar Heels as the ACC champs. Group of 5, I'm going to go with the team that's been the most consistent last few years, because a Group of 5 more is about brand, I feel like, and keeping the head coach and consistency, following up with him. Appalachian State has done a really good job at following up with head coaches. I mean, they've been good since 2005, 2006. Not a lot of people knew whenever they beat the Wolverines that they were FCS national champions. Okay, so they've been consistently good. One of those consistent programs. Coastal Carolina is another really good team, but last year they weren't that good, and I think Appalachian State this year with Tulane, I think their Tulane's head coach left, so I think that mantle's now going to go with Appalachian State.
Some unique picks for the G5. I'm gonna make my picks pretty quick. Big Ten, I gotta go to Michigan. It's like what Sammy said. Ohio State lost a lot. Michigan schedule benefits them. It's kind of balanced. They don't have a lot of back-to-back tough games. They have a big game, a couple weeks, and a big game. I think Michigan, in my opinion, the Harbaugh 3-game suspension would be questioned, but you look at the schedule earlier, like they'll be fine. I think Ohio State would be tested early in a non-conference game, early, not early, week 6. I think you guys played Notre Dame or week 5 around there. So I think that's going to be an intriguing matchup to see if Sam Hartman's literally legit in Notre Dame. My Big 12 champion, you guys said Texas, Oklahoma. Dude, it's the Big 12. So when you think of the Big 12, it's not going to be Texas and Oklahoma. Sorry. It's not. It's going to be the Oklahoma State Cowboys this year. Why? Because it's the Big freaking 12. That's why. I really don't know. They'll win 10 games and get into because I think the Big 12 is top 2 teams. They don't have divisions. I think it's the top 2 teams. I don't think they're going to have to do divisions again. When they're adding almost every single school out west in their conference. Pac-12, USC's getting a lot of buzz. Campbell Williams, in my opinion, is probably one of the best quarterbacks in the game right now. Mm-hmm. I think right now he's number 1 overall draft pick. So he'll go. Wow, I don't know. The Texans suck again. I don't think they're going to draft another quarterback back years or Colts. So Caleb Williams, I think, is good. But for USC, I look at the Pac-12 and I look at Utah and go, well, Utah's won back-to-back championships. Cam Rising still a question mark. I'm going to go look for a quarterback that's consistent, that has an offense that's very potent, that caught on fire at the end of the last year. Just ran out of games. It got demolished by Utah. But I think this is a season where Bo Nix and Oregon find a way to win the Pac-12, because I do think they don't play USC this year, but they get Utah and or Eugene. So I think that would be a pivotal matchup. Let's go to the SEC. Oh, wow. Bulldogs. I'm not going to pick against them until someone beats them. In the ACC, you have North Carolina. You said Florida State, Pat. I love my Noles. I really do. I do think they play in the title game, but I don't see them winning the title. I got Clemson winning the ACC. Because I have some thing that ACC is going to find a way to screw Florida State because of our antics over the last couple of weeks because of us wanting to leave the
I'll stumble against NC State.
Probably. My group of 5. One quarterback name that you need to hear is Grayson McCall, quarterback for Coastal Carolina. I think that's his name. Grayson Gadsden. Am I right? Grayson McCall?
I think
Coastal Carolina. Is it McCall?
I think it is McCall, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. Could transfer quarterback. He's down there. He was in, I think that's the guy I'm thinking of. I like the Catamounts logo. I could be butchering that, so if someone said, Jim, you don't know what we're talking about, okay, I don't. I'm just picking the group of 5. Like all the good group of 5 teams are now in the Big 12, and you just see what I just mentioned about the Big 12. Just roll the freaking dice. Like, hey, here we go. So Oklahoma State, do I think Oklahoma State's going? Not really. And I did the SEC, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's nothing like conference predictions. It's how can I say it? It's hum in certain conferences. It's usually the same 3 teams, and in other conferences, it's the whole ordeal. Big 12 is more consistent. The ACC, SEC, Big 10 are top heavy. It's always the same 4 schools, technically every single year. But overall, it's honestly, it doesn't matter. You can win your conference and you'd be left out. Next year, hopefully, if you win your conference, you are not being left out because the field does expand. But speaking of the field, next thing, forgot to ask. We did a conference championship. Who do you think is going to win the 2023 Heisman? Go with Pat on this one.
Oh, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting race in the Heisman this year. I mean, I'm still doing my work, still doing my digging around on which quarterback that can actually do it. I mean, right now, I would say Drake May. I mean, the way he could perform, I mean, last year he performed pretty well, so it could be either Drake May. I would say that he can win the Heisman.
Sammy,
I think I'm agreeing there. Based off my projection with them winning the ACC, I think Drake May will need a Heisman year, and I think he's going to get the Heisman year, and I'm definitely excited to see it.
Well, my Heisman Trophy winner is going to be the first Heisman Trophy winner to go back to back in over 30 years, or no 30 years, 19, almost 50 years. Holy shit! That is homeboy from USC, Caleb Williams. I just think that there's other teams. I think USC is going to be in the playoff picture longer this year, and he's going to be more key matchups than Jordan Travis, and then Mark May or Kate Helmick's another guy there. But you got to look at what type of offense they run. Honestly, like Mark May, not Mark May, Klubnik and May are in an offense where they're going to throw the football freaking 50 times a game, maybe 60 times a game. It seems like they have no, even though Will Shipley, Clemson's a hell of a running back, Clemson's going to run the ball like crazy. North Carolina lost both their running backs in the NFL last year, so they're going to let Drake May go out there and throw the football around like crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna name a sleeper. No one's talking about this guy because it's cool he plays for, but he's a talented QB, and he plays in a conference where if he does get some key wins, he will be in that conversation. And no, it's not Milton from Tennessee; it's Spencer Rattler from South Carolina.
Yep.
I have another sleeper, Blake Corum. I really think he could really make a serious run with that offensive line and the way they run their offense. They're going to have the marquee games too. So I really think that he could make a serious threat to Drake May and Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, I just don't know with a back-to-back Heisman. We've had a couple good candidates. I think Lamar Jackson, Johnny Manziel, and Tim Tebow both had really good bids, even better than their Heisman year, and still didn't get it. I don't know if we'll ever see it, though, in our lifetime because of that second Heisman stigma.
Yeah. And
But you can't rule that out, though. That
no,
could happen, though.
no, yeah. I would say also Sam Hartman from Notre Dame. I mean, look what he did at Wake Forest. I mean, he was phenomenal at Wake Forest. And we lost Sandy.
Yeah, keep going.
Look what he did at Wake Forest. I mean, it was pretty phenomenal what he was doing there. I mean, slinging that football around. Then now he's going up to Notre Dame, where Notre Dame will be having some marquee games too, like Ohio State. I wouldn't say Wisconsin because Wisconsin's definitely on the down year. I mean, especially I think they play Clemson this year too.
You're talking about Notre Dame. Notre Dame is home against Ohio. They're at NC State week 2. They're home against Ohio State week 5. Then they're at Clemson, I think, week 9. Then they got USC at the end, or USC in between there. So they play 4 matchups.
There's going to be some good marquee games for Sam Hartman to actually start pushing his name. So that'd be my sleeper there. It'd be Sam.
Well, that could be a good pick, and he has marquee matches. When you look at people who are trying to get to the college football Heisman Trophy race, you cannot give performers like, oh, yeah, he had a great performance. Like, for example, I'm going to throw a quarterback that played for the University of Florida, but he did have that time when he was there, and that's Will Greer. He had a great performance against Tennessee, great couple passes against Tennessee, and that type of game. Yes, we know it's against Tennessee, but that's not the marquee game that's going to win him a Heisman Trophy. You got to look at a lot of these games where you have these just like you're going to have your elite players. Like I would say this when they were trying to push the Christian Ponder Heisman thing before 18 years ago. Like he's a good quarterback. He's not a Heisman quarterback. You don't have enough big time games for him to show out. He can torch the Marylands and the Georgia Techs, but when you got to have him go against Clemson, it's only one marquee game. Like EJ was in the conversation too. Yeah, he did perform in those big marquee games, but he did the opposite. He laid an egg against teams that he should be destroying.
Yeah.
And when you look at Heisman's with Hartman, yes, Hartman's a great pick because now he gets the opportunity to be on a team that can win those marquee matchups to get him in that conversation. Yes, he can be a sleeper to win the Heisman. I think his draft stock goes from late to mid-third round pick to top 10 if he plays these games, marquee games, against Ohio State, against USC, against Clemson, against NC State, like he did against Navy. He does that, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. We know what he did at Wake Forest, but Wake Forest doesn't, make the meter jump of the excitement compared to Notre Dame and the eyes that Notre Dame football gets on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah, I think Hartman is a great, like I said, Spencer Rattler. Like he was coming out of high school, he was the next coming of the next great quarterback, and I think him and was it Riley? I think it was at Oklahoma at that time.
Spencer Riley.
Yeah,
they didn't.
Lincoln Riley.
They didn't get along, so he left, and then I think it's a homeboy from Central Florida went over, who's still there now, Gabriel. So yeah, like Spencer Rattler has the talent. Well, there's quarterbacks, and you look everywhere in the college football. Go, well, the reason why he transferred, like Florida State had a 5-star quarterback transfer to Nebraska. Caleb Purdy. He's not really even playing in Nebraska because we have another quarterback who went to Florida State, wanted to go to Florida State. Willie Taggart said no. He goes to Georgia Tech. Then he goes, not Willie Taggart. Norvell says no because Norvell wanted his guys. And now Chris Sims is in Nebraska in the Matt Rule system, which is going to be pretty exciting to watch. So there's individuals out there. But what I'm trying to get at is like, you need to perform in the bigger games. Notre Dame will give you that spotlight. Ohio State gives you that spotlight. Florida State gives you that spotlight. But you can also throw that crap away where you can go for 5 touchdowns and no interceptions against NC State. You lay an egg against Tennessee State. Heisman voters are going to look at that Tennessee State and go, what's up with this?
Yeah.
Like, Heisman Trophy winners do not struggle against those teams. And that's what Hartman has had a history of doing. Shining bright in big games with Wake, then having duds against teams that he's supposed to be waxing. Maybe that's just college football, but that's him. That's me as a Florida State fan watching Wake Forest all the time. Like, oh, he plays like this against us, but when he's playing Elon, he struggles. Like, I like Hartman's pick. I think Hartman's going to be a damn good NFL quarterback when he gets there.
Yeah.
I think I was talking to Buddy at work a couple days ago. I said Hartman's just the future quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams. He's going to be the future starter for the Rams. Let's wrap it up with the final thing here. Sorry about technical difficulties. Sammy did jump off. He came back on. College football playoff predictions and national champion. We're going to switch this around. Sammy, who are your 4 college football playoff teams for the 2024?
I have
23 season.
At the end of the year, I have Georgia, the Wolverines. I'm going to have a second as my 4th seed will be LSU as my 4th team. I think their only loss will be against Georgia, and I think that would be their reason why they're at 4. And number 3 would be the undefeated North Carolina Tar Heels.
Oh, wow.
Wow, you're high on North Carolina. Ooh. Man, you need to pass that stuff down here.
I think you have a really good quarterback. You can win a few games. Really, I think talent-wise, they're really with a lot of these teams, and I think Drake May is going to close that gap between these two. I mean, their head coach, he's good. He's already a legendary head coach with Texas. They have all the keys right now. Drake May, I think, really is the missing piece. He's going to make everybody else. He's going to elevate a lot of the players around him. As we saw last year with Josh Downs and a lot of other players that went early in the draft. I don't think they would have went as early if Drake May wasn't the quarterback last year. So we're going to see, I think, a breakout year for North Carolina, the football program in general.
Who's your 4?
So right now, of course, everybody knows number 1, Georgia. Automatic. They know what they're doing. They're going to continue to do what they do the best. Is to play Georgia football, and they're there. They're not going away anytime soon until someone comes in the SEC and beats them. And as right now, my number 2, it would be Ohio State. Ohio State this year, it's going to be an interesting year, but I feel like Ohio State will get the job done. They'll go into that Big Ten and beat Michigan because. No, I say not in the Big Ten conference, but towards the end of the season. Sorry, and beat Michigan because they want that win more than Michigan does right now. So Ohio State would be my 2. My number 3 is probably going to come in an interesting fact. I'll say it's going to be Florida State. You will see Florida State in the playoffs at number 3. I know everybody's probably going to say, oh, why are you going to put Florida State up there over USC Trojans or LSU? Yeah, this is going to be Brian Kelly's second year underneath LSU. Yeah, they're going to have a good team, but I don't think LSU can get there. I don't think Brian Kelly can get the LSU team there just yet. Not just yet. We'll see. But Brian Kelly is building a good LSU Tiger football team down there in Louisiana. So Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Florida State 3, and my last it's going to be Alabama. Alabama's going to be in it. I mean, a lot of people are probably going to come at me at that for saying, "Oh, why are you going to put Bama in there again? Why are you talking about Alabama?" It's Alabama. They always do well after a bad year. I mean, it's days in, days out. I mean, they have a bad year, they follow up with a great year by getting back into the playoffs and winning it. But everybody gets tired of seeing Alabama, but I'm sorry that you're going to see Alabama back in there by 4. So
You're high on FSU, same as high North Carolina. I'm like, geez, okay. I think
I mean, you got to keep it interesting. You got to keep the stuff interesting.
like my playoff is not as crazy as you guys are. My number one is not Georgia. Yes, you heard me. Number one is not Georgia because I think Georgia does slip up this season, but they do win the SEC. They get there. They get the slip up. They get the SEC title, but they're in. The number one seed team, get this, is not an SEC school. Number one seed team comes from the state of Michigan. The Michigan Wolverines are in one. So right now, Western Michigan. Gotcha. No, I ain't doing that. Michigan's number one. Number two is Georgia. Number three is a team that they will play. Well, number three seed, of course, will be. I know I'm going to say it. LSU Tigers. I think they'll be the 3 seed. So you got 3 in Georgia, and the team number 4 will be the ACC champion, which will be the Clemson Tigers at the 4 seed. The team that Georgia loses to is Tennessee, ladies and gentlemen. They lose to Tennessee, but Tennessee themselves somehow. They'll lose to a team that they're not supposed to lose to in Tennessee fashion, and they'll lose to Alabama because they traveled to Alabama this year. Alabama gets revenge. That's who they lose to. They lose to Tennessee. Knowing Georgia, they'll lose to Tennessee, get aggravated, and go to Kentucky and lay an egg. Tennessee. They'll lose to. They'll beat Georgia, get excited, go to Alabama, get crushed. Yeah. Tennessee fashion.
Mm-hmm.
That's my 4 team. My national title game. It's gonna be kind of funny. It's gonna be Georgia versus Clemson. Clemson finds a way to beat Michigan because Michigan gets in, but finds a way they can't win the first round. Again, a tradition that keeps on giving. Michigan makes the playoffs, they can't get out of the first round. They'll play Georgia, and I have Georgia repeating for the national title, beating Clemson. Pat.
Well, coming out of the first round, I have it as right now Georgia versus Ohio State. I think we'll probably see a rematch from last year's in the playoff game, but I still won't see Ohio State being able to beat Georgia. I feel like Georgia will three-peat, and unfortunately, coming from a Gator fan saying that, it's very obnoxious to say that, but Georgia's the one. Georgia wins it again. They do their three-peat.
Sammy?
I think I have 1 versus 4, Georgia versus LSU. Georgia going undefeated, and LSU 1 loss against Georgia in the SEC championship game. But I don't think it would repeat in the playoff. I think LSU would beat Georgia in that rematch setting. I like Brian Kelly a lot as a head coach and with a lot more talent than he's ever had at Notre Dame. I think they'd beat Georgia in that rematch. And then the Wolverines against North Carolina. A lot of people bag on the Wolverines for their playoff performances. Last year against TCU, if you watch, their offensive line got bullied. They really just the front 7 got bullied. And I don't think North Carolina is going to do that. And I think what the Wolverines are going to do is that they're going to play bully football and the 3 yards and cloud dust, old Big Ten style football against North Carolina. I think they're going to not run away with it, but just make them grind it out in a lower scoring game than North Carolina is used to, slow down the game a lot, in a 24-14 type of game. Now with LSU versus the Wolverines, I think it just matchup wise, LSU runs away with it against Harbaugh. So the LSU would be my national champion in that format.
Oh, wow.
So all 3 of us have said that the SEC wins another national title. Oh, home.
Mm-hmm.
Power 2. Okay. No matter if it's 12 or 4 teams, it seems like it's the same 2 conferences that will banner. But honestly, out of the teams that we think we know is going to win the national title. As a fan, what team would you like? Go, you know what? I really would like to see this team do it. And it would be a nice story to see this team do it.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be that team? Besides your favorite team, by the way. I can't say Ohio State. I can't say Florida State. And you can't say Florida back.
Of course,
Sam, who do you think? Who's that team that you'd be like, that would be a good story?
The greatest story in college?
But that'd be a good story for you. It's like, I'll be happy if this team won the national title besides the usual suspects like Georgia, Alabama, and Michigan. And, you know, the Cinderella story that you'll love to see happen if there was a Cinderella story.
I think, in a way, the Wolverines would be a Cinderella story since it'd be their first national championship since the 1950s, right? 1940s, their first outright national championship. But without the Blue Bloods, I would guess North Carolina or a Group of 5 school. I don't know what exactly Group of 5. Maybe Houston of all the schools. They're not Group of 5 anymore. They're Big 12. But you know, a school like that that doesn't have a lot of success, but has like glimpses of success, like last year with North Carolina. We almost see if there was a couple games that they should have won, probably would have been in the playoff, and would have had that taste. Same thing with Houston. There was a few years where they went undefeated. There was a year where they went undefeated and didn't even get a chance to play and represent. So seeing them get on top, and they haven't been on top in a very long time. So seeing that would be very nice. It'd be best story.
So I would say my favorite like Cinderella story that can do it. I mean, yeah, people would probably say, "Oh, you want to say Tulane?" I wouldn't say Tulane. I mean, the team that always gets talked that can actually win some certain key games. In all honesty, I wouldn't mind seeing BYU winning the national championship. And imagine BYU winning the national championship. That whole state will go nuts. I mean,
half the state, but
dude, yeah. But still, I mean, BYU is sometimes could be that dark horse team that could come up and beat you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they can do it, if they can be that dark horse team again, and actually if they could get in there, that'd be a miracle. That'd be a great Cinderella story to tell.
And that'd be their second national championship. I don't think Utah has any.
No, they don't.
I have two teams, and one is in the crazy Big 12 conference that, you know, just roll the dice. The other one's in the Big 10, and that's Penn State. That's a fan base, a loyal fan base that's been there for thick and thin, investigations and all, and they've stuck out, wideouts. That would be an awesome story. They finally get in and, you know, win title. Be something I can get behind. Because I have no ill will against Penn State. Like, from the outside looking in, they look like a fan base and a program that has tradition. They just haven't gotten over the hump in such a long time. And the Big 12, I like to see a team, you could say like a Texas Tech or a Baylor, or like a team in Texas that wins the title, or TCU, one of the Texas teams that wins the national title. That'd be something to rub against Texas, who hasn't done it since, 2005? 2006 was the last one for Texas. I think that'd be something cool. Texas A&M is not the same. It's because they're in the SEC. That's not really a Cinderella, because if they actually went on the streak and made the playoff, they'll get the favoritism because they're from the SEC. Talking about teams that, you know, actually have to earn their way into the playoff. Big 12 is that type of conference where you got, you know, one loss, you're done. Some years in the Big 12. In the SEC, loss, you're not done. 2 losses, maybe, depending on the logo that's on your chest. If it's an A, 2 losses may not even knock you out. If it's an L, maybe.
Yeah.
If it's an A&M, yeah, you're done. Like 2 losses, you're done. But yeah, and of course, you gotta love the Cinderella story if it's like a Boise State, BYU, crap, even Central Florida, if they finally get their chance to do a legitimate national title, not the one
they haven't fake one.
Yeah. That's what they should be. That's one thing that they should outlaw. The government should see the they're passing all these bills and all. They should outlaw claiming national titles that are not earned.
Yeah.
They should outlaw that. But overall, yeah, I can get behind a good. Like I got behind that Tulane story last year. It's a great story, and they went toe to toe. No, I think they beat you. Did they beat USC last year?
I think so.
They did.
Yeah,
They did beat USC. They went toe to toe with them.
So that's a storyline I like to get behind. A couple years ago, I got behind the Michigan State storyline that they didn't make the playoff. They almost did. They went to the Cotton Bowl and they went up against a team that they were supposed to get annihilated. And I think it was Pac-12 USC or Oregon, and they beat Oregon. No, they beat USC back then.
Mm-hmm.
And USC has bad luck in the Cotton Bowl, kind of think. But yeah, it's just the Cinderella side of things that I like. I can get behind. It's like if it's not my team, I like to get behind a true underdog because sometimes a true underdog can cause chaos. And with the 12-team playoff coming next year, I expect a lot of chaos from lower seeded teams.
Yeah.
We finally get to see if the 5-12 matchup in the college football playoff is going to be similar to the 5-12 that we see in March Madness. Possibly. We won't know until next year, but we will know this. By this time next week, the college football committee is supposed to meet somewhere to discuss the new format. So we'll know what the format is next week.
Mm-hmm.
So, any final words, Sammy?
I'm good. I'm excited for the college football season to kick off, man. To get to watch Ohio State put a mud hole in Indiana.
Pat, I know your boys are. I think your guys are on their way to Utah right now, trying to get ahead of the storm.
Yeah, they're on their way right now. They're supposed to be in Texas, in Dallas right now to get ahead of the storm. So tomorrow you see them in Utah to get ready for the Utah game. It's going to be interesting. It's definitely want to see how Billy Napier did his studies on these guys, especially Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz coming from Wisconsin, transferring on down. He said that he's the right guy right now. We'll find out Thursday at 7:30. See if Graham Mertz can be that guy for Florida, just to help them out for right now until they actually start getting in a better quarterback. I know that's probably going to be carrying on, but another team that I would say for the Cinderella would be Nebraska. That imagine them coming back and finally being back on top in the Big Ten.
Not back on top, but 10-win team would be something that
There'd be something. They'd be getting somewhere in the right direction. But I'm definitely excited. Yeah, but I'm definitely excited for college football to be back. But I'm definitely not ready to be biting my nails for this Florida team this year again.
Well, coming from a Florida State fan, I am excited that the season's starting. I'm going to be really stressed out on Sunday night. Like FSU's chances against LSU. I think LSU, the game against LSU, is a pivotal point where if Florida State goes out there and plays at how they were being hyped and beats LSU and beats them, let's say by a score or two, then I can look back at my prediction and go, okay, now I see Florida State have a path of them making the college football playoff. Florida State has a lot of good aspects. They have a quarterback that's in the Heisman Trophy consideration, Jordan Travis. In my opinion, Pat knows him very well. Jordan,
unfortunately,
he made some plays against Florida. You go, only a few players can do that. There's a couple of things that one thing I like about opening week again is excitement. No preseason games, but sometimes I wish college football had a preseason so your guys are fully prepared for a massive matchup. FSU is the only ranked game, 5 versus 8. So it's gonna be exciting down in Orlando. So I think Ohio State, Indiana's big noon on Fox on Saturday.
I think so, yeah.
So you guys start off Saturday. Pat, it starts off college with the legit games on Thursday. We
Yeah.
cap it off on Sunday night. Well, Clemson and Duke caps it off, but it's Clemson and Duke. Nothing gets the country rallying like Monday Night Football in Durham, North Carolina. If Clemson doesn't blow out Duke, then Clemson has a lot more issues than just who their quarterback is a Heisman Trophy candidate or not.
And you got to think too. I mean, you've got South Carolina versus North Carolina. I mean, you got your Drake May, you got your Spencer Rattler. Which quarterbacks will come out and want it more in that game too? So
absolutely true. And also, to find out from our buddy of ours, found out that ESPN is changing the intro to College Game Day. So coming to your city is going to be all new. So
I think that's still crazy.
So we're changing the college football rules to NFL rules for the clock. Now you're changing or coming to our city for Saturday night College Game Day. Come on, stop changing stuff. Stop changing stuff that doesn't need to be fixed. Like, hey, let's fix college football. Yeah, we need to do this, and this. Okay, we're doing this. No, don't do that. That's what's good about the sport. Like, we complain as fans, like we want a bigger playoff. They finally give us a bigger playoff, but what do we suffer? We're going to lose about maybe 2 to 3 possessions in average a game because of the new rules. Because 1010XL, local here in Jacksonville, did a comparison from NFL games to college football games based on possessions. The NFL, like college football, averages 3.5 more possessions per quarter, almost not per half, than the NFL because of the timing rules. Now college football is going to equal the NFL because of timing. Yay! So get ready for football games to be ending in 2 hours. Get all hyped up for a football game and crap. Feel bad for your Army and Navy fans out there at the end of the year. That game's going to be done fast. Like, kickoff. Yeah. Game over. Like, you ran 4 plays. That's what happens. But anyways, gents, episode 1's in the books. Next week, we'll record on a Tuesday or a Monday. Next episode drop next week on Wednesday. We'll actually do our selections. The pollsters will give us our votes, and we'll debate who the 4 playoff teams are and the teams that we face. That's when it gets all exciting. We'll have a graphic up and we'll select stuff. That's what the actual show is going to be about. And we'll have more people, just us 3 on the episode. We'll have Joshua Jackson. We'll have Matt McClendon from Oklahoma. We'll have Justin Renfro, former Miami Hurricane, Jacksonville Shark, CFL legend, NFL legend on the show as well. So we'll have a bunch of people, and we'll be debating week 1. If the season ended, how we did the show, ladies and gentlemen, start next week. The season ends week 1. We select the 4 teams. That's it. That's how we do it. That's the show. That's the select. We just want to do this preview show so you see what we're doing. And you got our preseason polls. Follow us on Twitter at Selection Pod. Follow us on Facebook. Search up the Selection Council podcast. Episodes will be up Wednesdays at noon. If we have power and able to record. And everything will be on podcast platform. The Selection Council podcast. The links in our description for all the stuff. Twitter bios. Or what do they call it now? X bios. You can follow me at J-4. You can follow Pat. We're at just at Patrick. What's your name on Twitter?
Yeah, it's simple. Patrick R. Eubanks. Simple as that. Nothing too fancy, nothing too crazy.
Sammy, what's yours? At Sammy _ something, right?
I don't even know my Twitter. You support me at Pro Arena. I have Twitter. I just don't know what the handle is.
Don't. Sometimes X, Twitter, whatever. The community that me and Sammy are in is so toxic. I just go days. I just mute the F out of everybody. Like, it's like, and I come back and go, oh, look, same BS. Let me just keep going on my day. Which I'm currently doing that right now. So people are like, why am I not saying stuff? It's because I have everything muted. I really don't care. But that's Sammy. That's Pat. This has been episode 1 of the Selection Council podcast. Enjoy college football Thursday night in Utah, where the Gators take on the Utes. Cap it off with Clemson and Duke in Durham for week 1 action, and come back and join us next Wednesday at noon, where we select the college football playoff based on week 1 results. I'm Jim. That's Zach. Or that's Pat. Excuse me, that's Pat. That's Sammy. This is Selection Podcast, episode 1. We'll see you guys next week.